Hi church, or should I say shalom. As you see, I'm not there in the flesh, but I am with you in the spirit, and we're coming to you via technology. We're actually with the church team in Israel, and it's just been wonderful. In fact, as you're watching this morning, we are in the Valley of Elah. It's where David fought Goliath. It's going to be fascinating to see the two mountains, one with one army on it, the other with the other army on it, and then the valley where Goliath would come out each day mocking God and the people of Israel. And then seeing what David thought of that. You know, if you think about it, for David, it wasn't a huge giant of a man defying the armies of Israel. It was actually someone defying God. And therefore, if you think about it, Goliath wasn't the actual giant of the situation. David saw the real giant and he knew that God was the giant of that situation. It's about perspective. It's how you see it. One side is an army living in ever-increasing fear that only sees a giant, and there's a shepherd boy who has ever-increasing faith who only sees a giant God. And that brings me to my topic this morning, the promises of God. We've just come out of Vision Sunday speaking about taking of ground. And let me tell you, it's the promises of God that are going to see you take ground. The promises of God are given to us by God so that we can see God's perspective, that we may see whatever we are facing, enduring, or needing to combat from the perspective of God. You know, what you see is vitally important, and God knows this. And it's why I believe that He gives us His promises. He understands without giving us something concrete to look at, to focus on, we will actually end up focusing on the wrong thing. That's what God's promises do. They actually focus us. They focus us on the future rather than on the present, or even worse, the past. The past and the present make us concentrate on ourselves, our current issues, the particular problems that we're going through right now, and the obstacles that we're facing. We can't see what the future looks like because of what's right in our face. God promises to me, let me see God's future for me. And as I said on Vision Sunday, God's promises are essentially God's ambitions for us. It's what He sees for us. God's promises move me. God's promises activate something divine in me. God's promise changes my perspective on something and changes what it is that I'm focusing on. Think of David. As we are here in the Valley of Elah, think of David just as a shepherd boy. He's just a shepherd boy, and he goes to his brothers, and he's confronted with Goliath and an army that he would have been thinking was just a magnificent army. He only sees they're impotent against one giant. And he sees one truth with his eyes, but he sees the real truth through God's promises, which is why he wins a victory. You know, David had at least 3 promises that he could focus on that showed that the apparent truth that he was looking at with his eyes wasn't the actual truth that God was saying through His promises. If you think about that, number 1, he had a promise in his life that he was going to be a king over Israel. So he knew that they could never be defeated and taken over by someone else. Number 2, he had the promise from God that God would never leave them and that He would always be on their side. So he understood that God wasn't going to leave them kind of defenseless at that time. And number 3, he had the promise that God had given him this promised land. So this marauding other army wasn't going to come in and take over. So even though he was seeing something with his eyes, because of the promises of God, he was able to actually see something else. And it's because he saw the real truth given to him through God's promises that he so easily defeats the giant Goliath. You think about it, for David it wasn't a big deal. He just used the slingshot that he knew how to use, and a few small smooth stones, and the first one he threw, bang, in David's head. He didn't need, in Goliath's head. He didn't need a new way. He didn't need something complicated or fancy. He just used what he already knew how to do, and that won the day. Not because of how good he was or what he could do, but because of the power of a promise of God changed his focus, changed his perspective, and he was able to see the real truth above the truth of what he was actually seeing with his face. You know, I want to stir you to use the promises of God that he has given to you. Those promises remove obstacles. Jesus was asked by his disciples about faith. And he said to them, we all know the scripture, he said, if you had the faith of a mustard seed, you would say to this mountain, be removed, and it would be cast into the sea. It's a great picture, isn't it? We can all picture that. Whoa, a big mountain being just tossed into the sea, uprooted and flung. But in the light of God's promise, I feel like I've had this kind of clarity, and I want to share that with you. Let's use David and Goliath again. David is faced with a mocking Goliath. That's what he sees. That's what he is confronted with, and that's what's right there in his face. But he has God's promise, as I said, personal promises and global promises. He's going to be king, that's personal. And God has promised the Israelites the land, that's global. So as faith rises in his heart, what he sees actually changes. Instead of seeing certain loss, instead of seeing the threats, these mountains of defeat and intimidation are immediately plucked up and thrown into the sea. And a certainty of victory comes over David that because he understood that the promises of God will exalt themselves over the issues that we face today. And victory rushes into David's spirit. And I want to tell you, at that moment, victory is actually guaranteed. He didn't see the obstacle anymore. It had been plucked up and cast into the sea by the faith that he showed in God's promises. Once the mountain of fear and intimidation be cast into the sea because of faith in God's promises, Goliath essentially ceased to exist. There was victory, and that was certain. You know, the verse I've used regularly over the last few times I've preached, because it's just sat in my spirit, I just see such power in it, is 2 Peter 1 verse 4. We're going to have a look at that on the screen. By which have been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you may be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption as in the world through lust. God promises to you are exceedingly great, and they're precious, and they allow us to partake of our divine nature and not wallow in the flesh. So I'm going to use myself as my example today, and I'm going to talk about some personal promises that God has given to me to help you see the power of getting a promise of the Word of God in your life. The first one really is about church and essentially about my life. It's Isaiah 54 verse 17, and it says, no weapon formed against me shall prosper, and every tongue which rises up in judgment against thee I shall condemn. For this is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is from me. This is my verse. This is for me. It has brought me comfort and strength and encouragement again and again and again. I very consistently and constantly live in this verse. Let me show you why it's so good for me. You know, bad things happen. Sometimes they're not my fault, and many times they are my fault. Sometimes bad things happen at church. Sometimes it is my fault, and sometimes it's not my fault. And what can happen in a mind like mine, I can start to overthink things. I can start to believe rubbish thoughts. That an incident, one little thing is the beginning of the end. It's the slippery slope. Soon the church will be empty. That one bad Sunday means everyone is leaving the church. With one family leaving the church, it means everyone else is going to leave, and the first of many, and soon it's just going to be terrible. And I start thinking that I'm a bad leader. I start to think I just need to pray more. Oh, I must have done some sin. I must have done something. And I just start thinking negative things. Many times I get to this thought, I think to myself, like people realize I'm not really a good person, and so now they're just leaving, and they realize I'm not a good guy, and and 1 + 1 = 52, and it just grows. But then I remember this verse. No weapon formed against me will prosper. Yeah, there are weapons formed. Yeah, every now and again a bomb goes off. Yeah, every now and again something negative is going to happen. That's life. But I want to tell you, it's not going to prosper against the plan of God for my life. It's not going to prosper against the will of God for my life. I might lose a battle every now and again. I might have a few sleepless nights, and the worst, maybe even a bad week. But I want to tell you, I'm going to win the war. The weapon isn't going to prosper. God is going to win. God's plan for my life is what is going to endure in the end, not some particular incident. So no matter how bad it is, and I can tell you time and time again, it's as I remember this verse, and this sense of doom is all over me, this sense of dread is all over me, and then I remember that verse, it's not going to prosper. And all of a sudden, this thing starts to form in my spirit. It might be formed, but it's not going to end up hurting me. I always end up on top. Some people just hate it, but I do. I always end up on top. God looks after me. And then it goes on to say, every tongue which rises up in judgment, you shall condemn. If there's anything that can get into my spirit, it's criticism. And I've tried to work it out, and I've worked out I obviously am basically insecure. It just gets to me. I'm a little bit better than what I was, but it gets to me, and I guess because I am a people person and I do try, I just think that I just want people to love me. I want people to like me. It's always been part of who I am. I hate it when someone speaks bad about me and this thinking, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm not a bad person. I'm not that. But living on the opinions of others is, let me tell you, it's exhausting. And the opinions of others is insatiable. And it's this verse that I go to. It's this verse that changed things for me. I actually saw that the opinions of others are not going to bring me down. And living trying to meet the expectations of everyone only ends up hurting me. And it just shows me God will fight my battles. I don't need to go and defend myself. I don't need to prove what I was right there. I don't need to kind of, just move into every circumstance. God will fight my battles, and over the years he has. God's protected me again and again. I remember I was leading a group, and while I was leading this group, we had a visitors book, and people would come and write their name and address so I could contact them and say, glad you came and love you to come again. And one of the guys, he got this girl's name and address out of this visitors book, so we had to stop using the visitors book after that, right? It was really annoying, right? But he got this girl, and he started to ask her out, and she didn't want to go out with him, so she said, look, I don't want to go out with you, and he said something stupid. He just goes, well, what you reap is what you're going to sow, and how you've treated me is now how people are going to treat you. And she felt quite intimidated, justifiably so, by the way, by that. And so she told me, so I rang up this guy and said, how dare you, and rah, rah, rah. And then I said, you know what? I'm a shepherd, and I've got to protect my flock from a wolf. And you're a wolf, and you're not welcome anymore. So I thought I was being good. The next thing I find out is I've got these lawyers ringing me up, and I'm being sued for defamation, right? Apparently I've defamed this guy. And then he took it to the leaders of my church, he took it to the state executive, and eventually went to the national executive. Here's this guy telling me and telling everyone that I had defamed him, that he wasn't a wolf, and and all these other things. Now, to be honest, I think that he fulfilled all the criteria of what a wolf is. And, like, if someone were to do that here now, I would still. But I'll probably just do it in a wiser way, right? And so I had to have mediation with this guy. In the end, right, like, truth is a defense in defamation. And so I was able to show that he was actually doing something that he shouldn't be doing. And we got out of the court case, but then it still went to the national executive of pastors and all these different things. And then one day I had a dream. And in my dream, I saw him as a spider. So when I went to mediation with him, I go, no, you're not a wolf. You're not a wolf, right? And I said, you're a spider. No, I didn't say that to him, but right? And I got out of it. God protected me. The verse goes on and speaks about the heritage of being a servant of the Lord. So when I start getting off track, when I start thinking about my own self, when I start thinking about what I've missed out on because of, following God or doing something like that, I'm reminded and I get refocused that the blessing on my life isn't because I'm good, but I've actually trusted God with my life and I've tried the best I can to serve Him. And so this verse keeps my priorities straight. I promise you, every time I start feeling dissatisfied with something, I see that my blessing comes because I'm serving the Lord. Everything that I've got is because of God, not because of Mark's goodness, but because of God's goodness. And then the verse finishes with, and their righteousness is from me. I'm not righteous, but God is, and I'm going to seek His righteousness. This verse keeps me in gratefulness of His grace. My righteousness is from God. God is the one who has given me my righteousness. So what great promise that is. In one verse, this verse has cast so many mountains into the sea. Mountains of issues, mountains of doubt, mountains of accusation, mountains of discouragement, mountains of fear, mountains of defeat. If I'm feeling low, I can go to this verse, and soon enough, the Goliath that's shouting in my ear is just a decapitated head I carry around as a testimony. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against thee in judgment you shall condemn. For this is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their righteousness is from me. What a great verse. The next verse of mine, that's for me, is a life verse. It's a foundational verse. It's what I mean by that. This is a verse that I build my life upon. When I'm rocked, when storms come, when life throws up a hurricane, I can go to this verse and it sees that I'm not blown away. And it's Isaiah 50 verse 4. And it says this, the Lord God has given me the tongue of the learned, that I may speak a word in season to him who is weary. Morning by morning, he awakened my ear to hear as the learned. This is how I live my life, morning by morning. Nothing describes more than what I want to do in the kingdom of God is bring a word in season to him who is weary. Hopefully today there are people just weary, and what I've got to say brings something of energy and brings a spur into your spirit. I want to speak in word and season to him who is weary, but it has to be fresh. There's no point telling you something that happened to me all these years ago. No, it has to be fresh. I don't want to give you a stale piece of bread, but I want to give you something fresh, something that will bring sustenance, something that will bring encouragement. You know, it tells me that when I get weary, and I do get weary sometimes, that it's the morning by morning that's going to awaken my ear again. It's going to bring encouragement to me. It's not a holiday, it's not a break, it's that morning by morning, that daily walk with God. It's probably why I can hardly get through any sermon without telling you somewhere in that sermon that your daily walk with God is important, because it's what fires me up. That your alone time with God will actually determine everything. And that's because that's been my reality. Everything I've overcome, everything I've gone through, everything that I've learned, everything that God has used has all begun in that morning place, in that time alone with God place. And this is what I love. I love the thought that God is waiting for me. He's wanting to awaken me. I can see him standing there. Are you awake yet? Sometimes, send an angel, quick, just wake him up. I'm waiting. I'm waiting to speak. And I just think that's great. It has been the source of my strength and why after 38 years of following Jesus, there's actually still a freshness to Jesus that is invigorating to me. It awakens my spirit. It does something in me. Do you know how comforting that promise is to me? That no matter how I feel, no matter how bad things are, I'm literally only one alone time away from Jesus. Just one time with Jesus is going to fix whatever it is I'm going through. It doesn't change what I'm going through, but it does something in me. That is amazing. Fresh encouragement and renewed strength. That's mountain flinging power from a promise of God. The next promise I have is over my life is a very practical one, but a no less powerful one. And it's Proverbs 4, and it says, when you walk, you will not stumble. When you run, you will not fall. Take firm hold of instruction, my son, for she is your life. This was my very first promise. I was a very young Christian, maybe just a matter of just weeks, literally a matter of weeks. And it basically tells me this: I'm going to keep walking and running in God in an upward trajectory. That God has a plan for the whole of my life, not just a portion or a part or a time of my life, but the whole of my life. But the main part of that verse that has spoken to me and been such an encouragement to me is the take firm hold of instruction. Instruction has been a big part of my life because I came to God with absolutely nothing. I had no skills in any area of life really, and God has just put into me as he's instructed me and used people to instruct me. God allowed me to be led by great leaders and mentored by great men and women of God who showed me and taught me and instructed me of how to live the Christian walk, how to appropriate the promises of God, how to read the word, how to pray, how to fast, how to make a demand on God, how to look to God. I've been mentored in those things. And I still have people in my life that can mentor me and guide me and instruct me. And God is continually bringing new people around that I'm able to learn from, new books to read, new podcasts to listen to, new preachers to start to listen to. What happens is that they mentor me and instruct me. This verse tells me never to stop learning. That if I have a problem, there's an instruction somewhere. There's someone I can go and ask. There's something I can go and read. There's someone I can go and listen to. Recently I had a very delicate situation. And if I didn't handle it right, it could have blown up in my face. And I really had no idea how to navigate that situation. I really didn't know what to do. But this promise tells me, take hold of instruction. So I talked with a very competent lady who comes to church here. She's a lady with a track record. And I want to tell you, in the past, she's also helped me greatly because I realize I don't know everything. There's things that I've got to learn. And so I went and spoke to her and I sounded her out and I said, can you please give me some instruction? I want to tell you, she gave me a solid gold nugget. And it turned a potential disaster into a complete win. And I want to tell you, it was easy. It was an easy win. It was as easy as David just getting his slingshot and flinging it into Goliath's head. These are 3 promises that God has given to me. They were as real to me today as the day that I got them. And if I live to be 110, they'll be as real to me on that day. I've memorized those verses. They are in my spirit. They are in my head. They are ground upon which I walk. You know, I still remember when I got all three of those verses. That's how real it was to me. One was on a Saturday night, a few weeks after becoming a Christian in 1982. One was on a Thursday morning as I was sitting in a Bible college lecture in 1984, and one was in my study one morning in my house in Payneham, Adelaide in 2005, one morning as I was just seeking the Lord. See, when you get a life promise, it helps you, but it's memorable. You remember. You know, I haven't got time to tell you this morning of the many, many, many times God's given me a specific word about a person, about a work thing, about money, about whatever it be. God's given me specific promises, but there are too many of those. But I want to encourage you, get a life promise. That's how you're going to take ground. Find out God's ambition for you. You know, I'm going to ask the band to come right now, and in a minute we're going to pray for people. You know, the promises that God has given me has allowed me to take ground all my life. But I actually have to activate them. I have to appropriate them. I have to use them. You know, I have to spend time each morning with God. I've got to seek out instruction. I have to attach those promises to my life. I don't want them somewhere in a filing cabinet somewhere that I can just use whenever I need it. No, I want them in my life at an easy place. So when a problem hits, I can declare, no weapon formed against me is going to prosper. When someone criticizes me, I can say, no, God's got my back. When I get greedy or covetous or somehow think that I'm missing out on something, I can remember that my blessing comes when I serve the Lord and not because I deserve anything at all. Right? And also too, is that when I mess up or when I sin, I know that's hard to believe that I do sin. Not for some of you, not for Nita. Right? My righteousness is from God. See, God's promises activate our divine nature. It stirs God's spirit in your life. But it's the believing and the using of the promise that's the actual light switch. Right? The power is in the promise, but the light switch, what turns on that power, the switch, is actually faith, the believing, the declaring, the remembering, the using of the promise. That's what actually casts the mountains into the sea. It's appropriating that promise. Can you please stand with me this morning? This morning, we want to pray for those who haven't got a life promise. See, those three promises that I have, they help me in every circumstance in life. There's literally nothing that one of those promises doesn't help me with. And so because I've got those promises, I'm actually protected. And so what I'm asking you today is ask yourself, have I got a life promise? Have I got a scripture that I can remember that whether it's rain, hail, or shine, I know that God is with me. God wants to give you one of those because we need them. Life throws things at us that are unfair, that are unjust, that we haven't got the capacity to get through on or get through by ourselves. So I ask you this morning, ask God for a life promise. For those of you who have had one, that maybe you put it in a filing cabinet, it's now time to get it out and to start to believe again for that promise. And for those of you who are activating and using your promise, God bless you. That's good. You know, we have people ready to pray for you this morning. So start to come now. As the band just starts, please start to come right now and ask God to speak to you. Come this morning. God is here. God is going to do something to you as you seek Him. That's what the Bible says. If anyone lacks wisdom, if anyone lacks, let him ask of God.